All right, we're back. We're back in the building. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Good holiday weekend. Hope you ate a lot. I couldn't do much. I was sick pretty much all weekend. Still a little under the weather, but I'm here for you guys today and welcome back to the Mortgage Mayhem where real estate meets real talk. I'm your humble host, G Money, and today's episode is action packed, folks. We're covering all kinds of Newsmax lawsuits that's shaking up the media, the labor market cooling off, and a new study proving loneliness is just as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. How about that, folks? And then the coup de grace, we're going to bring him up probably here in like the next 15 minutes. I got a special guest that's coming into the studio, Clay Lehman, a real estate leader who turned chaos into comeback and is now teaching agents and investors how to win with AI and real world systems. And of course, I'll be sharing our 4 brand new viral mortgage and real estate hacks you never heard before. So let's get into it, folks. I look forward to this. This is going to be a great show today. Like I said, I'm going to bring Clay up in about 15 minutes, but in the meantime, in between time, let's kind of talk shop. Let's bring up some good stuff here. I think we need to talk about, folks. No, we don't need to go there, do we? Mm-mm-mm. No, not there. Nope, not there. All right, here we go. Thousands of people accused of crimes in Massachusetts are walking away with job charges because the state refuses to pay higher wages to court appointed lawyers, causing a shortage. In Massachusetts, most people who can't afford legal representation receive attorneys through the Committee for Public Counsel Service, which splits defense work between public defenders and private attorneys, known as bar advocates. Recently, many of these bar advocates halted accepting new court-appointed cases as of late, demanding higher hourly wages to compensate for rising operational costs and inadequate pay. Currently, bar advocates are paid $65 an hour in district court, $85 an hour in superior court, and $120 an hour for homicide cases. After factoring in expenses like insurance, rent, admin work, and unpaid time, many advocate attorneys estimate they're making closer to $20 an hour. The constitutional consequences Lavallee Protocol invoked due to the work shortage made indigent defendants have gone days or even weeks without assigned counsel. Under Massachusetts Lavallee Protocol, established by the Supreme Judicial Court, defendants held more than 7 days without representation must be released from custody. If no counsel is provided within 45 days, the case must be dismissed, typically without prejudice, meaning it can be refiled later. Susan Monarez, the recently sworn in director of CDC, has been out just 4 weeks. Oh, okay. So basically, what we're talking about here is you got attorneys, public defenders not being able to, in their opinion, be properly paid to do the work that they're supposed to be doing, right? So they're saying they're only getting $20 an hour where it should be $65 an hour if they're in a district court, $85 an hour if they're in a superior court, and $120 an hour for homicide cases. So, after factoring in all their expenses, they're saying they're making closer to $20 an hour to defend homicides, to defend whoever they're defending. And I think what they're saying is enough is enough. If we're going to be doing this work, then we need to, it's almost like teachers, they do all the humble work. It's just maddening, that they're taking care of America's kids. And, the rate of pay that they're being paid is just, peanuts to what they really should be getting paid. So in this case, it's similar. These guys are doing all this work, and basically they're getting paid as if they're working at a fast food restaurant. You know what I'm saying? So I totally agree that they should be getting paid more, because they're defending folks who don't have, the private equity to, purchase or to seek out, attorneys that could, defend them. So these are, attorneys that's doing this, because they love the work, because a lot of them could go into private practice or, work for a law firm, but they decided to become public defenders. So for them to be able to, defend people, for them to be able to defend people, they should be getting paid an adequate amount of money to be able to do that. It's just like being teachers. It ain't the same, because you're dealing with criminals, or, folks who may be criminals, may not be criminals. But if you're going to, have attorneys who really want to do the job of being a public defender, you got to pay them at the end of the day. You just got to pay them. So we'll keep an eye on that, and see exactly, what's going on, and if there's, any kind of updates that might be coming down the pike. All right. So let's switch it up. All right. CDC Director Susan Monterez ousted 4 weeks after being confirmed. Department of Health and Human Services. And she says, the recently sworn in director of the CDC has been ousted just 4 weeks after being confirmed by the Senate. The Department of Health and Human Services said Monterez, during her confirmation hearing, was clear about her support for vaccines, saying in July 1st, "I think vaccines save lives. I think that we need to continue to support the promotion of utilization of vaccines." Over the last few months, her boss's HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has made significant changes to vaccine policy, particularly for COVID vaccines that have the potential to limit access of the vaccine. So, this administration is, they are who they are, right? So basically, they bring this lady on. They kind of knew where she stood before, they brought her in front of Congress. She was actually, confirmed by the Senate, and in a month, they circle back and, fire. And it was mad protests. People was walking out, so on and so forth. So, I don't really understand, like, why you're going to bring a person in, and then within 30 days, how can you determine, what a person, especially at this high level, what they're going to be able to do in that position in 4 weeks? I don't know if she wasn't agreeing to do some of the things they felt like she needed to do. And sorry about that, guys. When I'm looking at my screen, it looks like my glasses are a little crooked. But anyway, so, I don't agree to this. I know people walked out. It was, it was highly contested, that she would be fired, with only being there for 4 weeks. And it's the gamesmanship that this administration is playing, with, people's lives. And I just really don't understand, the cruelty of that. You come in, you're firing people left and right. It's just like, can you allow people to actually do their jobs? If they're not doing their jobs, then yeah, that's one thing. You got concrete evidence that they're not doing their jobs. Then you can, take the necessary steps to get somebody in there that's going to actually do what they're supposed to do. But if they're not just buying 100% into all your ideology and, you know, the things that they feel dear and true to their hearts about, you're going to just step in and, you know, remove them is just, you know, insane to me. So, you know, we'll keep watching, keep our eyes on that as well, see what kind of updates. I know they've already brought in a new person. We're going to see like if he's going to, you know, get on the bandwagon with everything that, you know, administration wants him to get on the bandwagon with. And if he has enough kahunas to, you know, bring forth his expertise as a person that's, you know, brought into that position, you got to have some kind of expertise. But in this case, maybe not. You know, what we're seeing is a lot of people are getting into these positions without any kind of experience at all. So, you know, we'll keep our eye on it. We'll, you know, because the CDC is important. I mean, that's, you know, that's the policing of our health. So we want to make sure we got somebody in there that's not just on some, you know, kissing the boots of the administration, but somebody who's going to hold everybody accountable, because it's not just them, it's the you know, the USA and the rest of the world that's, you know, taking a look at this, who's, you know, hoping that we have the right people in there who can, you know, lead us and make sure that, you know, the environment that we're in, the country that we're in, is a country that's, you know, being legit about, you know, diseases and vaccines and just the ways of the health world, right? I don't really know, you know, Mr. Kennedy's ideology. I mean, it's all over the place. You know, he comes from a Democratic family. I think he might have been on some independent stuff. And then Trump, of course, latched on to him because he was making some noise during the primary. And now he's the, you know, the director. He's a conspiracy theorist, from what I can tell. And vaccines is one of those things that, you know, he conspired a lot. You know, especially during COVID, he was just saying some things that just made it difficult for the CDC to do their jobs. And now he's in charge. So we'll keep our eye on it, and, you know, we'll let you guys know as time goes on. You know, if we can kind of see if he's going to actually play ball, or he's going to continue to be a partisan, you know, person in that position, and not someone who's, you know, exclusively looking out for the healthcare of the folks here in the United States of America and abroad. So, all right, so we'll keep an eye on that. I don't want to jump into our next subject. I want to just kind of wait and you know, until Clay pops back up here, so we can, you know, get into it with him. And you know, because I think this is going to be a great interview. Clay Lehman, let me just kind of give you a little background on him. You know, he's one of those corporate finance guys who was around, you know, when the economy collapsed back in 2008, and then he launched his own firm. A lot of people that I talk to, you know, they're going to be able to come on here and give you the for real story, because they was there. You know, they went through the trial and error. They went through, you know, all the heartaches and things of that nature during that time. You know, so we just really wanted to kind of bring him up today, because he's going, you know, not only did he get through that trying time back in 2008, you know, he also, you know, he's looking out into the future. You know, he does a lot of stuff with AI. You know, all you realtors out there, this is really a good interview for you guys, because, you know, we're going to talk about, you know, AI and real estate, and, you know, how it's going to affect realtors, you know, and so on and so forth. So, you know, this is going to be a good one, folks. I can't wait for him to come up. We're going to just, allow him to just tell his story. And then, of course, I'm going to ask him all kind of questions to help you get a better understanding of who he is, a better understanding of what he's bringing to the table. So he should be popping up here in like the next minute or so. I'm going to take a quick little water break, and then we're going to get into it. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, so it was, this weekend was crazy. A lot of news, we can't get to everything. The president's been missing in action. I think he has a press conference here shortly. But anyway, we're gonna bring our guests up to the stage. Clay Lehman. Hi, Clay. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. It's such a pleasure to have you here. I was just kind of telling the audience, a little bit about, you and your company, but I can't do that any justice. I would much more prefer to allow you to do that. Like I said, guys, this is Clay. He's going to pretty much tell you guys who he is, his company, and then we're going to get off into an actual interview with Clay. I'm looking forward to this, guys. Realtors out there, finance folks out there, this is one of those interviews for the ages. I think we're going to be able to dial back, months from now, years from now, and hear the things that Clay's going to be talking to us about today. And we're going to be able to see those things in actual action in the future. So, Clay, if you want to just kind of get started, you went from corporate finance at Porter Homes to surviving the 2008 collapse, right?
Yes, sir.
What was your rock bottom moment, and how did you turn it into a launch pad instead of a dead end?
Well, that's a great question. I think the rock bottom, I think the scariest moment was when, my place of work was, I guess for lack of a better term, raided by federal officers. So I was at Taylor Bean and Whitaker, and, unbeknownst to me, there was a multi-billion-dollar fraud occurring at the business. And so when, you got federal agents and windbreakers that say FBI they have their sidearms, not drawn, but still it's a little disconcerting when you're effectively just a banker, which, I wasn't a banker, but I was working with a bunch of bankers and we had them come in. That was really scary. And then the business shut down 3 days later. So I went from feeling like I was on top of the world. I had revamped the REO process at that business and we were kind of off to the races, to then 3 days later, like out of work. And, fortunately for me, I had the opportunity to work with the bankruptcy trustees to help them unwind the assets. But it was then that I said to myself, this is going to be the time that I'm going to try and strike out on my own. I would love to tell you that it was because of some tremendous confidence I had in myself, or I thought I had some great idea to bring to the marketplace. But honestly, my biggest motivator was fear. I had 3 young kids at home and a wife and a mortgage and, all the responsibilities. And I didn't, I didn't want to let them down. And so that was really, the moment where I kind of was like, if you want to call it rock bottom, I just think it was the pivot point, because I don't think of it as like a low point. It was a scary point, to be sure. But then you had asked, how did I not let that be a dead end? And it's just simply, you don't do yourself any good sitting around saying, woe is me.
Right.
And it just was instilled in me from my dad that whenever you run into problems, which is it's not a win or I'm sorry, it's not an if, it's definitely a win, because you're going to run into problems in life, that you're, if you want to be successful, if you don't want to let the people in your life down, you don't wallow in misery. You just take the next right step, which you don't always know what that is, but you take the next step. And if it's not the right step, then you take the next one after that until you figure out the right path. And that was, something that served me well during that time. But what an interesting time that was to sort of see it from the inside, the mortgage market collapse. It was pretty crazy.
Right. And just to kind of piggyback off of that, so, everyone talks about the crash, but you actually built during it, right? So what did the 2008 crisis teach you about resilience that investors today desperately need to hear?
Well, that's another really good question. So I think that one thing it taught me was just caution in investing, because I was exposed to a lot of people that weren't cautious. And I don't think it was because of a lack of intelligence or, an overly risky, in hindsight was an overly risky approach to investing. But I think it's just you get caught up in the enthusiasm of the moment and start to ignore your fundamentals. Since that time, I've read a number of books on investing, and one of the interesting ones. And I'm not a big Tony Robbins guy. I mean, I'm impressed with Tony Robbins, but I'm not a big follower of his. But I read his money book, and what I really enjoyed about it was he interviewed a bunch of very high performing or high profile investors, and almost invariably, their number one rule in investing is don't lose money. It wasn't like, it was basically not about chasing big returns as much it is limit your downside. And that's what I think I took out of that. So in 2008, I was 33, and I didn't have a lot of money to put at risk to lose. And I wouldn't say I have a lot of money now, but when I approach investing now, I'm informed by what I saw in 2008, maybe to some degree to my detriment, because there have been some things I didn't pull the trigger on that probably would have been okay investments. But because I focus now on limiting my downside versus chasing a big return. So that was definitely something I felt like we could learn there. But I also think we need to let those lessons be informative, but not restrictive. Meaning, again, going back to the idea that, like, I reflect. So, in 2008, I was working at the mortgage lender. Then fast forward to like 2012, 2011 or 2012, and I'm listing homes for sale for like Fannie Mae and some other REO opportunities. And they're selling really nice three bedroom, two bath block homes in decent areas for like $60,000 or $70,000. And I didn't have the foresight at the time, nor the resources, but to see that, it's a cycle. We were at the bottom or near the bottom. That represented a lot of opportunity. And there was one person in particular that bought a ton of them, not anybody I had a direct relationship with, but who I'm aware of. And he's somebody that's more experienced and has ridden a bunch of different cycles. And he made a killing on, kind of the old Warren Buffett saying of being greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. Mm-hmm. I think 2008 through 2011 crystallized those concepts. One, seek not to lose money first. And two, the be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. Those two kind of encapsulate what I learned. And so moving forward, I've been very cautious in how I invest because of what I saw. I just make sure the biggest thing was leverage. People were just so over leveraged. And so I'm just real cautious about how I approach leverage. I do have in the back of my head that if interest rates, which I don't foresee, but if they're ever below 5%, I just realized that can make anybody look like an investing genius. So I'm going to be ready.
Right. All right. That was good stuff, man, especially the last, line, the Warren Buffett.
Oh, sure.
Line. That's really a good strategy to actually follow. So let's talk about this. So you say you built your reputation on telling hard truths, not selling stories. What's the biggest lie being sold to agents and investors right now, in your opinion?
The biggest lie, that's a good one. Off the top of my head, I feel like agents and investors, it might be two separate lies. For agents, I just think that there's too much being made about, and this coming from, I love AI, I love the new technology, but it's that technology can make up for a lack of your basic blocking and tackling of getting out there, of shaking hands and kissing babies. And just to be clear, one of the things that my company does is we help agents assess their digital footprint, the path that customers take from finding out about who they are to then actually doing business with them. So we're, I'm really optimistic and bullish about, let's get in there and get your digital presence fixed. But at the end of the day, it's still a relationship business. And that's the other thing, is that AI is going to replace agents or investors or really anybody. Now, to be clear, yeah, I expect AI to disrupt jobs. I think that jobs will shift, just like they did when we went from being an agricultural economy to an industrial economy, from an industrial economy to an information economy. And now we're moving, shifting again. And it's almost, you can think about it now, going from an information economy to a relationship economy, because information is becoming more commoditized. Everyone has access to it, which is a great thing. I mean, just to think about that, we have access to every bit of information in the entire world. This is my beautiful wife, by the way.
Yeah.
Every bit of information in the entire world at our fingertips. So where that used to be a separator, your knowledge, just your library of information was something that could separate you from someone else in your industry. Well, now it's not so much the access to the information, but knowing what to do with it. And that's like with my kids, when I'm working with them with their homework, which they don't ask me for much help with their homework because I'm not that great at it anyway. But when I do help them and they're like, why do I have to learn this stuff? Now with AI, I can just look it up. But if you don't know what to do with it, if you don't know how to apply it, that's right. Like you can fake it until you make it, unless you can't make it. And if you can't make it, if you don't know what you're doing with what you're faking, then you won't make it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like it can only carry you so far. So I think that's a lie that's being told to everybody, is that AI is going to replace everyone, that AI is going to make everybody, what do you call it? Like, not needed, irrelevant. I think that's far from the truth, but I do think it's important that we embrace AI, use it as a tool, because I think the bare risk isn't being replaced by AI, but by someone that is using AI. So I think that's a lie. For investors, I think there's a lot of fear in the marketplace right now, because at least in my area, I'm in Central Florida. And when I think of investors, I think of real estate investors. It's a tough time right now to try and figure out where to invest, because inventory is ballooning. We've got sellers that have properties on the market for extended periods of time. It's kind of funny when you contrast it against where we were in 2008, because that's the thing. People say, is this going to be another housing crisis? No, it's not. We feel like we have a lot of inventory because we, 3 years ago or 4 years ago, we had 1 month of inventory available, and now we have 6. That's a lot more inventory. But in 2008, we had 30 months of inventory. So we've got a little bit of runway before we're in that kind of trouble. So I think that might be another lie that's being told to investors, is that we might be on the cusp of, some sort of big decline. Now, with that said, I expect prices to pull back simply because economics demand it. When supply goes up and demand stays static, prices have to come down. So we'll see some of that. But I don't think, barring some sort of major event, I don't see any sort of meaning like, some major unforeseen major economic downturn, a war, knock wood, but under our current circumstances, I think we're going to have a correction of, reasonable proportions where we see prices pull back maybe 5 or 10%. But when you look at how they've gone up, you're talking about increases of 80% and then a pullback of 10%. That's just the natural cycle of real estate.
Absolutely. Speaking of AI, right, in the future of real estate. So, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but you coach agents on using AI the right way, and let's
Yes,
keep it
sir.
real. What's the dumbest way you've seen people trying to use AI in real estate? And what's the smartest way that actually makes you money?
Well, I love how you say that, the dumbest way. Well, there are a lot of dumb ways to use AI, and I use it in some dumb ways too, but just to
Me
have
too.
fun, make fun images and stuff like
Right.
that. I mean, the dumb way to use AI is to be lazy about it. And to me, that is, instead of, well, let's just say, like, you go in and you say, write me a response to this email, or write my listing description, or write me a blog. Those are
Mhm.
great use cases for AI. But if you're just handing off the task to AI without participating, that's the wrong way to do it, because
Right.
you lose your voice, you lose your authenticity, you lose that thing that makes you different. What makes you different is your experience, your POV, what you bring to the table. So instead of saying, hey, write this listing description or write this blog, the way I use it is and I use it for a lot of content creation. I mean, that's a great use case for it, but I don't simply say write it. I say, here are my thoughts on this topic. But what I ask it to do is enhance it, neaten it up, add to it, flesh it out. And by including my voice in there, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like I wrote that piece. And I think of it as the distinction between creating with AI or created by AI. If you're creating, like, if it's all AI, then you didn't really do anything. You may
Right.
have prompted it to create something. You can't really engage with it. Like, that's not yours. But when
Right.
you use your voice, that's when it becomes authentically yours. But
Right.
the number one thing that I would encourage agents, really anybody, to do with AI is understand your customer's journey. It
Mhm.
has never been easier to get a deep, deep dive understanding of how your customer thinks, acts, and makes decisions, where they hang out, and what content they consume. If you don't know those things and you're trying to market to someone, you're wasting time and money, because how can you market to someone you don't know?
Right.
You can use AI to know your customers at an intimate level. And the thing that I coach people to do is use deep research, which is available in most of the models. I prefer Gemini's deep research. ChatGPT's deep research is really good too, but Gemini, you have greater usage. You run out in Chat. In Gemini, I don't know that you even run out. And so what I do is I just go in and I simply prompt it and I say, I am a realtor in Ocala, Florida. My primary target audience is first-time home buyers. I want a deep research report that tells me their demographics, their psychographics, their questions, the questions that they have that I can answer. Where do they hang out online, and how? What are the pain points that I can use to engage with them? And then finally, what are the calls to action that are most effective at each point in the funnel? And I know that was a lot, but what happens then is you'll get out of a deep research report like a 20 or 30 page document with everything you need to know about reaching that customer. Now,
Mm.
I do not sit down and read the 30-page document, just true
Right.
confession. I'll
Mhm.
skim it for certain points, but what I do with the document is I then feed that into my AI model, whether that's Chat or Claude or Gemini,
Mhm.
and I say, now, craft me a marketing campaign to reach this target client. Write me content or give me a content map to reach this target client. The biggest, so what I feel like we have going on in the real estate industry, and this isn't new, is that we get our license, we do our education. It teaches us how to fill out a contract, how to measure the square feet in an acre for whatever reason, different like tactical things to do to sell homes. But it teaches us nothing about how to grow our business. And
Right.
so what almost invariably happens is that an agent starts their business, they reach out to their sphere of influence, their friends and their family. They reach a certain level of success if they're good at what they do, but then they plateau and they don't know how to grow from there. And that's where we come in. And I'm not trying to turn this into a sales pitch. We're saying the number one first step is understanding your client's journey. And that's a huge, huge thing you can get out of AI with just a few minutes of work.
Right. All right. So if an agent is listening today, right now, um, if they could only use one AI tool or system in their business, what should it be and why?
That's an awesome question. And it changes over time. I would say Gemini. So Gemini is Google's AI model.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main reasons that I say Gemini is because there's so many of us use either Gmail or Google Workspace in our businesses,
Right.
and Gemini, is available to you through either of those. It's very versatile. And I'd say the same thing about ChatGPT. If you had asked me this question probably 2 or 3 months ago, my answer would have been ChatGPT. Those two models can do the most for you. And so I'm a big advocate of trying to keep your tech stack thin. Mm-hmm. Don't get every shiny object. That's with AI, and you could maybe file this under another lie. One that I fall for from time to time, but is that, you must have the newest, shiniest tool. You must have every tool. No, I think, between ChatGPT and Gemini, they can, do your normal kind of content creation stuff with you. They can do deep research. They can create images. There's really very little they can't do. So I would say my number one recommendation is Gemini, and then number 1A, not even number 2, but is ChatGPT. Those two are in my opinion, the most versatile, best tools for any use case.
Good stuff. So you're teaching agents now how to use AI to save time and close deals, right?
Yep.
What's the one AI hack that can literally add 5 figures to an agent's income in the next 90 days? This is going to be important, Clay.
Yeah. Everybody listen up. And I'll take you, this is like basically my framework for working with agents.
Okay.
So the first step is to run that deep research document to find out, what makes your ideal client tick. Then I would take that document and I would ask AI to map that customer's journey through the sales funnel, starting with being unaware to being problem aware to being solution aware to then taking action. Then I would take that and I would ask AI to map my marketing funnel. So go out and tell it what's your website, tell it the different places to find information about you. I would say map my funnel and tell me where my weaknesses are. Where do I lose customers along the way? And how do I correct that? It's going to identify, whenever I work with people, that's the first thing we do is we have a very advanced method of creating what we call their personal market expert profile or go-to market assessment. It's market expert assessment, basically breaks down every stage of the process. Where will the client find them? What will they find when they get there? What does your realtor.com profile look like? What does your Zillow profile look like? What does your Facebook profile look like? What are your calls to action? What are your lead magnets? It's going through everything. It's basically deconstructing your strategy. That's the thing that AI can help you do that will add money to your bottom line. It's not, listen, there is no one prompt, quick fix. Here's 50 grand. It doesn't exist. You got to do some work, but it's never been easier to do the work. And it's simply to ask AI to help deconstruct, where am I losing people in my marketing funnel? The biggest thing is just making sure that it's almost like thinking about, if you were going to, go fishing, you want to know where the fish hang out. What's
Right.
attractive to the fish? What time are they there? You want to know all this information. And then you want to make sure that when you're packing your tackle box that you're putting the right bait, you're using it at the right time, deploying it in the right place. It's similar to that. There's a lot of great analogies like that. The other one we use is like, if you're going to go for a hike or you want somebody, let's say you want to tell somebody how to find you and you're going to give them directions like a GPS. Well, if your GPS directions are, at some point you're going to go somewhat in the direction of somewhere,
Right.
they're not going to find you. And that's what your online profile is telling people if it's not filled out. You're basically, you should say, okay, this, my first time home buyers, they're going to start searching online for questions like, how do I save enough money to buy a house? How do I, what's the process to get pre-qualified? You need to be the one answering those questions. So you have to first know what questions they're asking. Then you have to know where are they going to find the questions. Then you have to think about what's the next step they're going to take. And is my content pointing them to that next step? So, I'm sorry if I'm going off here. This is one of the things I'm passionate about because I've seen the impact it can have on agents. You're going to map your customer journey, and then you're going to go through you're going to audit your own online presence and your own and online and offline. How are you taking them through that journey? That's how you add money to the bottom line.
Man, that was good stuff, man. So everyone is talking about AI replacing jobs, right?
Yep.
In your opinion, will AI replace real estate agents, or will it only replace the agents who refuse to adapt?
So, no, I think you nailed it at the end there. And I don't think it's necessarily that it's going to replace the agents that refuse to adapt. And the way I've heard it said best is you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by an agent using AI. I think that's a little hyperbolic too. I mean, At the end of the day, it's going to be similar to the shift from, manual to the internet, right? Like from when our MLS was in a binder to when, then you had to go online. And I'm sure now I will say I wasn't in the business at that time because I'm just so young. Right. But I wasn't in the business at that time. But I have to imagine that there were agents that were slow to adapt to that and probably had trouble, helping their clients in the same manner they used to. And that's going to be kind of what you see with AI. I get the skepticism for sure. And I also get the idea that it's like one more thing to learn. But the thing I'd like to encourage anybody listening to this that hasn't started playing with AI, it is not a technical mastery issue. If you can speak, you can use AI. If you can text, you can use AI. Like it is that simple. You literally have a conversation with it. And in terms of, one of the things that I get a lot, I post a lot of content online, a lot of social media stuff about using AI. And there's a lot of fun conversations and debate that come out of that, including the debate over authenticity. I am 100% on board with people that don't want to lose their voice to AI or to anything else. That's what separates us is the voice and wisdom we bring to it. Whenever I talk to people about creating content, they say, well, there's so many people already creating content. What can I add to it? It's like your client wants to hear it from you. They don't want to hear it from somebody else. They want to hear it from you. They want to hear your voice say it. With that said, you can preserve your authentic voice and use AI to help you do it. Before I started using AI, people will ask me, how much time does it save you? Well, it's hard to quantify because so many of the tasks that I do now using AI, I just didn't do before. The big one is writing blogs. I love to write and express and get ideas out of my head, but I'm not a great writer per se. I love, I'm a pretty good conversationalist. I enjoy talking to people, but when it comes to like sitting down and actually writing, which I tried to do a few times over the years, I just kind of lose my focus. I just don't have the attention span to sit down and write. With AI, I can express an idea. Like my process, which I'm happy to share, is I start with the idea of, I think I want to talk about this topic. And to be really transparent, I actually map out my content based on that customer journey information that I told you. I find out what's the customer journey and what content can I create to help them through that journey. So I have a map and I'll say, okay, I want to talk about this topic. Like, let's say one of the things I talk a lot about is optimizing your CRM. So I'll pick something about, writing drip campaigns. And rather than just say, hey, AI, write this for me, I say, here's the topic I want to write about. Whenever I talk to people about creating drip campaigns, I talk to them about making sure their language matches what their client's looking for, that they're answering questions that, so I go into what do I talk to these people about? How do I address this issue? So the AI then takes that and then fleshes it out further. And so that's how I protect my authentic voice. Then I also read over it when I'm done. That's another thing people don't do. They'll just post it. So I take a few minutes, I read over it, and then I say, oh, this isn't something I would say, or this is something I didn't think of. I iterate with it a little bit, but it only takes me about 10 minutes. So something that I would never do before, now I can do in 10 minutes. And the beautiful thing about writing a blog or recording a long form video is now you can content leverage. That's the other secret that people can use. Take that long form content. So let's say you wrote a blog piece about optimizing your CRM. Paste that back into your AI model and say, turn this into 5 Facebook posts and 3 LinkedIn posts. And then all of a sudden you've written one piece of content and now you have 10 or 12 or 15 things that you can post. That's the secret of high performing content creators, is content leveraging.
Absolutely. I do it all the time.
Yes, sir.
We're going to do it here on this episode right here. All right. So let's talk about your business and your personal growth, right?
Sure.
That's important. People always want to know kind of what's the man, and what is it really? What's behind the man, right?
Sure.
So you scaled and I could just correct me if I'm wrong. I've done my own research, so I'm coming up with questions, right? So you scaled a property management company, let it go at its peak, and then pivoted again into title and coaching, correct?
Yep, that's right. Yes, sir.
And most people never let go of their cash cow. How did you know it was time to walk away, Clay?
I don't regret selling that business. I think I did it at the right time, but I don't know that I did it at the right time. But I can tell you, I have not once thought back and thought, well, why did I do that? For me, it was a matter of, for one, I did feel like valuations were kind of peaking for property management businesses. For two, property management, I don't think it's any secret, is a grind. I was really fortunate to have an amazing operations manager and a very, very skilled business development manager. Although if he's listening, it's not you, Joe. I'm talking about someone else. I try to keep his ego in check.
Right.
But I had two really key people, and I was only working maybe 10-ish hours a week in the business, but it's still a grind. And there was some frustration that I had with, just sort of dealing with the friction between, owners and tenants. And I've been doing it for maybe 8 or 10 years at that point. And I just kind of wanted to get out of that in between of just being, I could go on and on. But with that said, the biggest thing was just feeling like I wanted to move on to something else. And I felt like I couldn't do both. I also, one of the kind of things in the back of my head was I didn't ever want to sit in the operations manager seat again. And, I knew that like the lady that ran it and continues to run it for the new business, she's amazing and would be nearly impossible to replace. And I didn't want to face that either. So I thought it was just the right time, and I guess the other thing is I always enjoy new experiences. I had never sold a business before. In fact, I never anticipated that anything I had initiated, any of the businesses I started, I never went into it with the idea of, oh, maybe I could sell this one day. So, earlier, it was in 2022. So in early 2022, I had a couple people approach me about buying it. And that got me thinking, wow, somebody would want to buy my business. And then fast forward, it was September of 2022. I ended up, connecting with the business that I sold it to. And it just felt right. It felt like there would be good opportunities for my team. One of the things that was important to me was knowing that they wouldn't be disrupted. Like if I sold to a business that, had like another property manager down the street, they'd probably let everybody go and just take our doors. This was a company that didn't have a presence in the state of Florida. So I knew that would protect my team. And then for my family and I, it just kind of put us in a position where, I'm still working and, will continue to work. And I didn't get into a position where I don't have to work, but it certainly made, the idea of retirement seem more feasible. So just all the things seemed to come together at the right time.
Right. Okay. Man, that's good stuff, man, to build a business and then be able to turn around and sell it, right?
I never expected to do it. Right. I tripped my way into it. But in all honesty, I mean, it's one of the reasons that I feel like I was led to do some strategic coaching is for that very reason. I never knew, like, how do you even go about growing a business to sell? How do you, scale a business without being, a prisoner to it? And that's what I've learned over the years and want to share with other people, because that was the biggest thing. The thing I was the most proud of was that I had gotten into a position where I had a very successful business that I wasn't a prisoner to.
Right.
I worked in it, but I could also go on vacation and not have the place blow up. In fact, I learned what I like to call management by, absentia, like by being absent, is actually a really effective management tool that helps your team thrive because they can't reach you. So they have to figure it out for themselves. And they usually found a better answer than I was going to give them anyway. So
Right.
that was what I was really the most proud of. But it was a great experience learning more about how to sell a business. And that's, I love working with real estate agents and real estate professionals trying to figure out how do they scale their business, but maintain some semblance of a personal life.
Right, right. Speaking of personal life, right? It's a good segment. Real estate breaks a lot of people down, families, marriages, friendships. What's your one rule for protecting your family and your mental health while chasing, these big goals that we have?
Oof, that is an existential question.
Mm-hmm.
I have been very blessed to have the partner I have. My wife has always been amazingly supportive and has believed in me. And yeah, I can't tell you how to accomplish that. I can just tell you that has been so important. In terms of how to protect the family, I just think that you have to keep in perspective how fleeting time is. There's two books that I would highly recommend for anybody really at any stage of their career, but the earlier you can read these, the better. One is called Die with Zero, and the other is called Buy Back Your Time. Die with Zero is really eye-opening for me. It talks about how if I can take a few minutes, I don't want to belabor a point. Okay. It talks about two real fundamental reasons that we try to save as much money as we can, which is one, so that we don't run out of money and become a burden to our family, and two, because we want to leave the kids with something. And so he says, for number one, we're basically trying to put ourselves in the position of being an insurance underwriter when we're trying to figure out how much money do I need to save, which none of us really do well. We just think, I just need to save as much as possible. He says, you got to think about your money as your life force, because you're trading your life for money. So eventually that's what you're going to die. If you die with a bunch of money in the bank, you just traded your life force for money that you didn't make maximum use of. He encourages you to look at insurance products to prevent you from being a burden to your kids. And then on the subject of inheritance, he says, the average age of inheritance in the United States is like 65 or 67, something like that. So your kids don't need the money as bad at 65 or 67 as they do at 25, 30, 35, 40 when they're trying to buy a house and get established as a family. And so he encourages you to look at trusts and things of that nature. There's a lot of great nuggets in that book, but those are two of the big paradigm shifts that occurred for me. The other book is a book called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. It is like one of my favorite foundational books is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I mean, I know that's everybody, right? But I would put Buy Back Your Time in that category in terms of the level of wisdom that comes out of it and how to approach your business. The thing that steals us away from our family and turns our business into a prison is our inability to delegate, or our unwillingness to delegate, and what I ironically refer to as saving money. I'll give you an example. So as small business owners, we want to do everything ourselves to save money. My background is in accounting. Bookkeeping is something that I am capable of doing. But is it the best use of my time? And that's where Dan Martell challenges us. He says, you have to calculate your buyback rate by taking the amount of money you want to make in a year and dividing it by the number of hours in the year. So like, for example, if you want to make $200,000 a year and there's 2,000 hours in a year, your buyback rate's effectively $100. He says you need to be very meticulous about anything in your business that you can pay somebody to do for half or less of your buyback rate. You should be delegating that work. And he lays out some great frameworks to use to create delegating tools. But I'm going to give you, like, this is the greatest tool ever, which, ironically, it's like I say that too frequently, but Google Notebook LM
Oh
is
my
the
God.
most amazing tool for business owners.
You know what,
What you
Clay?
can
I'm
do.
going to cut you off.
Oh, please.
I do all my deep dives, real estate companies, mortgage companies, title companies, anybody that I want to introduce to the audience, I take it through Notebook LM. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
See?
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you this use case for it. If you take your process manuals for your business, if they exist, okay, we'll start there. We'll assume you have process manuals. Upload them as a source into a Google Notebook LM, and now it goes from being like some papers that someone can read to it's effectively its own chat bot. So you can go and, like, we have it for our title company, and you can go in there, and instead of the beautiful thing is, like, if you even I've had my process manuals in Google Docs for years, which makes them searchable. But even then, let's say you were trying to find out how to handle earnest money deposits, but whoever wrote the policy referred to them as EMD. Well, unless you knew to search for that, it wouldn't understand. Google Notebook LM, it knows that context. But the other beautiful thing about it is you could take, so for our title company, we work in a system called Qualia. So I can create a Google Notebook that has my process manual that I've created for True Title, along with the downloadable information from Qualia that I can then add into the Google Notebook LM, and it becomes a resource.
Right.
But here's where, like, it's gone to the next level. Whenever I hire someone now, I train them online. Even if they're in the office next to me, we're going to do it online so that we can record the training session. Then immediately following the training session, it's the responsibility of the trainee to take the transcript of the training and upload it to their personal Google Notebook LM. So now, and I don't want to act like I don't mind if people have questions for me, but I'm a busy guy. Let's say I'm not available. Well, now they can just go to that Google Notebook LM and say, Clay told me how to post a blog, but now I can't remember. Can you tell me? Boom. There's all that information. It's definitely one of my favorite tools of the moment.
Yes, it's so crazy. Like, even with you, I just put your website into Notebook LM, and it creates a podcast. I'm giving away a little bit of my secret sauce, but it is one of the greatest things. Man, I was blown. You know how I found out about it? I was on Instagram one weekend, because that's kind of how I do my research. I grab articles from Instagram, and Mark Cuban was doing an interview. He was on a panel, and he was talking about, Notebook LM. Like, this guy's, I just hired a guy. He, I asked him about his company and what he could bring to the table, and he brought me a whole podcast talking about his company, and the way he did it was through Notebook LM, and he ended up getting the job from Mark Cuban. And from that point, from that point, I got on it, and I've been on it ever since. So I know exactly what.
Yeah, it's an incredible tool.
Yeah, it is. It really is. All right, so let's keep it moving. So if you had to make one bold prediction about the housing market over the next 5 years, what would it be?
Well, I think the next couple of years are going to be challenging in terms of inventory will continue to increase. I think we'll sort of, quote unquote, bottom out. I think prices will come down a little bit, but I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I mean, I know in our area, affordability is so out of whack, it just doesn't even make sense.
Right.
So I think we'll get some correction there, but then I think interest rates will come down a little bit. And, as interest rates come down, demand goes back up, and we'll start to cycle back up again. So I think that we'll have a bit of a dip over the, call it, maybe into 2026 a little bit, but as interest rates come down, I think that'll start picking it back up. So I think that, we're in good shape. I think the fundamentals nationwide are still strong. Like, we still have a housing shortage, which is, again, like I said, sitting here in Central Florida where inventory is increasing. hard to say, but over nationwide, I mean, we still are short some units. So I think there's a lot of great headwinds there. And then, I mean, not to like take the easy answer, but Warren Buffett just put $1 billion into housing, and he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. No. So I don't know what he knows, but I feel pretty confident that it's something that is, you know, that says good things for the housing market. So, you know, I don't know how bold of a prediction it is. It's just that I anticipate we'll see prices come down in our areas where we're over, you know, inventory is inflated, and then it'll kind of correct itself as interest rates, you know, start to move down. You know, for me, you know, I've for my investments, I invest primarily in, you know, I've built some rental houses. I have a couple commercial buildings. I'm not going crazy to go out there and try and get a bunch of other stuff. You know, it's hard to borrow money right now and make the numbers work. It's, you know, even though inventory is increasing, sellers' prices are still a little bit high. I think we got another year before we kind of get some better opportunities. I think we'll see foreclosures pick back up. Not crazy again. You know, I'm definitely not like predicting some big, massive crash, but they've been under, you know, so far under their average norms. You know, foreclosure volume has been below what you would expect for the volume of, you know, I think that has to correct itself. So we'll see that, which will create opportunity for investors. You know, I just think as the thing I love about real estate is, you know, if you're smart and flexible and paying attention, there's always opportunities out there. I mean, that's the thing that I feel like when I reflect on my career that I've done well has been like pay attention and kind of be ready for a move. I haven't predicted everything well. I haven't predicted it like in great timing, but once it gets through my thick skull, I just move. I make a move. I change. And that's what I love about real estate. And that's what, you know, for investors right now, really always you have to be smart, you have to be paying attention, you have to be flexible, and you have to protect your fundamentals. Don't let overly enthusiastic sentiment get you going, and don't let overly pessimistic sentiment keep you down. Just stay on your fundamentals.
Absolutely. All right, so we're gonna get ready to wrap it up. I got a couple like closing shot questions for you. We kind of like to kind of make this a little fun. I mean, serious questions, but you know, you don't have to spend a lot of time on them. You just give me a quick little, you know, answer on each one of them. So fill in the blank. In 5 years, the real estate game will look completely different because.
Well, I mean, this is AI. It's going to change how we go about engaging in real estate. I think the biggest change that we'll see is the sort of the commoditizing or democratization of information. You know, that's already like, I mean, I'll be Captain Obvious. That's already happened with Zillow and Realtor.com and people having access to information.
Right.
But now they're going to have access to better interpretation of that information. So it makes it more important than ever that you position yourself using your unique strengths. It's not just going to be a matter of popping up there a top producer award or whatever. They have to see what you bring to them as valuable enough to pull them away from, you know, the Chat GPT version of what you bring, you know, like that. I really am a firm believer in the value that agents bring to a transaction, but you now are responsible for demonstrating that to your potential clients. So I think that's going to be the biggest change, is that, you know, you have the clients that spend 2 weeks searching online before they reach out to an agent may spend 3 weeks because they're going to search online, then they're going to spend a week with AI, and then they're going to reach out to you. And that's where you have to be better than AI, which you are. I mean, you are, but you have to make that evident to your potential client.
Right. All right. Worst real estate advice you've ever heard?
The worst real estate advice that I've ever heard: date the rate. That's the easiest question you could ask me. So whenever that was interest rates are going to come down, buy the house, marry the house, date the rate. That was the worst advice. I think the biggest opportunity for foreclosures to come up are going to be those poor people that dated the rate. Rates
Right.
haven't come down enough and could end up in a position where they are going to have to break up with the rate and the house. So
Okay.
date the rate, worst advice ever.
Okay. You may have already answered this, but you might have a different answer for this
Sure.
question. One book every investor agent should read.
Okay, so the very first book every real estate agent should read is The Millionaire Real Estate Agent by Gary Keller. That's easy. It's not necessarily, he does have a Millionaire Investor book. I don't think I've read that. I've read almost all of his books, but The Millionaire Real Estate Agent teaches you so much about how real estate works and relationship selling. I mean, it's a foundational book. In terms of real estate investing, I don't know that I have a great answer for that. I love reading. I can't think. Like I said, I really enjoyed the Tony Robbins book on overall investing in money. I thought that was a really great overview of how to go about protecting yourself and going about investing. So that'll be my answer. Read Tony Robbins' book and read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. You're going to be off to the races.
Yeah, two great books. What's one cheat code for winning in real estate most people overlook?
Well, I think it's the idea of just paying attention. Just understand the tea leaves. I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked this question because it prompts me to remember one of my favorite things to do each month. Florida Realtors releases statistics on our market. I take those and I feed them to ChatGPT and I say, act as a real estate investor. Tell me what this means for the real estate market. And I do that, repeatedly in the same chat. And so it builds on itself and it starts to kind of map out where things are headed. Now, I'm not saying I haven't done anything actionable where I can say it made me $1 million, but I can tell you that it has made me so much smarter about what's going on, about understanding what the fundamentals are in our marketplace. I would definitely leverage AI, and you can do it at any scale you want, because one of the things that it's getting better and better at pulling statistics out. Like, for example, this is so funny. This morning I was sitting out, my wife's like, hey, I'm going to the store. Do you need anything? And I had just been working on a meal plan with ChatGPT. And I said to ChatGPT, hey, give me the shopping list for this. And I said, do you want me to print this out for you? And she goes, before you print it out, ask it to reference that against the Publix buy one, get one free offers of the week. And she was joking around, but I did it and it did it. And it said, you should buy this and you should buy that. It's similar for real estate, but like I said, I always, whenever you're getting data out of AI, I always encourage people to have some level of skepticism and double check the data before you act on it. Mm-hmm. But it's getting better and better about that. So all of that to say that, the AI can definitely be a hack for investors. But again, where you're, I wouldn't go so far as calling it a tinfoil hat, but definitely have some level of skepticism. One of the things I'll do is if I get information out of one model, so like if ChatGPT gives me something, before I post it, and I'm talking about if it gives me statistics or if it gives me, not just opinions, but facts, I'll generally run that through Perplexity, which is a great, it's more of a search engine model. And I'll ask Perplexity to fact check the information I got from chat. It takes 30 seconds and it protects you from putting something out there that's goofy.
Right. Okay, man, that was good stuff, man. If you could give new investors one tweet length piece of advice, what would it be? And this is going to be our last question, Clan. We're going to let you get out of here. But yeah, one piece, if you had to put a tweet out there, you know how we like tweeting. What piece of advice would that be?
The best fundamental advice I ever got about real estate is you make your money when you buy the house. There are no actions that you can take after you've purchased a home that can make up for buying it wrong. You have to be meticulously exacting when you're, making a buying decision, because once you've bought it, that purchase price is set in stone. Right. You can't change it. You can't rehab your way out of a bad purchase. You can't creatively finance your way out of a bad purchase. You make your money the day you buy the house. And if you don't, you're doing it wrong.
Right. Man, that was a gem. I really appreciate that. Hey guys, this is why I do this, to be honest with you, to bring up professionals like yourself. I've been in the industry since 2006. I was there in the downturn.
Yeah,
I was a branch manager. I went through the same thing, put into my parking space. They were, semi-trailer trucks hauling out. I went through the same exact thing. So I know exactly where you're coming from. But I also stuck with it, during that downturn. And when it actually turned itself around, I was able to have, massive success. And now this is kind of like me giving back, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So I really appreciate your time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clip this up. I'm going to send you the full interview. You can, take our clips, put them in wherever you want to put them. And if you can do the same. But yeah, man, I really appreciate your time. I know you were busy last week. We couldn't, do this, but I'm glad you stuck with me.
Oh yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah,
I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm with you. I feel like I've been really blessed to have the success that I've had.
Right.
I'm still striving for more, but if I can do something to help somebody shortcut their way from where I was to where I am now and better, hopefully I'm, empowering people to do more. That means a lot to me. So thanks for letting me be on your platform.
Oh man, not a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Mr. Lehman a round of applause. Did great, man. I really appreciate all the the nuggets that you're able to give the audience. I'll definitely be replaying this and kind of adding some things to my repertoire as well, man. You don't get a chance to talk to guys like you, on a regular basis. So to get the information is a blessing.
I appreciate that, sir. Thank you so much.
Not a problem, and have a great day.
You do the same anytime. Let me know. I'll be happy to come back.
Okay, I sure will. Thanks, Clay. Have a good one, buddy.
Have a good one.
Yeah. All right, man. That was Clay Lehman. A lot of nuggets, man. A lot of great stuff. And now one of my business friends. That's why I do this. So, as he said at the end, just reach out to him if I need anything. And I'll definitely be doing that in some kind of capacity. But yeah, that was Clay Lehman. He has his own company. You could go to his website. What is his website? That's Clay's website. I know I had it somewhere. Well, anyway, we'll post it. But yeah, so let's keep it moving, man. I hope you guys got a lot out of that. I seen a couple folks chiming in and sticking around to kind of listen. But a lot of gems, a lot of AI gems, realtors out there. He gave you a lot of game today, a lot of game. You know what I'm saying? Because he got that perspective. That's what he does. He helps agents, get into the AI space to build upon their business. So just a great man, family man, just overall, just a great guy. You could just hear it. I've never met him before. Like I said, we just kind of went back and forth to, make sure that we were able to get him up here to, tell his story and give you guys some jewels that you could take away and, add to your business. That's what it's about. That's why I do this. That's why I just told him. That's why I do this. We're able to give folks some different kinds of insight that's valuable, just as I'm getting ready to do right now. I'm going to give you some mortgage hacks, and then, we're going to get out of here. We didn't cover a lot of hot topics today. We'll do that next week. We're going back and forth with another guest right now, so we might have another guest next week as well, talking about some leasing stuff. I want to kind of, bring you guys, give you some game on that piece of the business, just like, we just talked about title a little bit, AI, and, maybe we should have got a little bit more into, the AI on the title side, but I didn't. I want to bring up some title, folks who, that's what they do all day, every day to kind of help us to get into that. But today's mortgage hacks, house hacking with the ADUs. I think we may have talked about this before. Turning a single family into cash flow by building and converting an accessory dwelling unit. That's what ADU means, accessory dwelling unit. In cities that are fast tracking permits, that's a great hack. So you can literally, have an ADU, on your property that can actually pay for your main property, which is crazy work. The credit partner strategy, new investors with cash but bad credit team up with someone who has strong credit but no cash. Banks love it, and you split the equity. That's a great one. Lease options with inflation protection. Negotiate rent-to-own deals where the purchase price is locked in today, but you rent it out now. Perfect for markets where values are rising. Buy debt, not bricks. Instead of buying property, buy non-performing mortgage notes at a discount. You can collect payments, restructure debt, or foreclose on, or foreclose and own the property for pennies. So those are our 4 mortgage hacks, guys. Like I said, we didn't get a lot into, a lot of the, the hot topics, but, I gave you almost an hour interview with Clay Lehman, corporate guru, who kind of broke down a lot of things for you guys, a lot of AI things for agents, title companies. He gave us some books to go read that can help you in your quest to be not just a better business person, but a better person in general. So today was a good day. We got in and out, about an hour, almost an hour and a half here. So that wraps up the Mortgage Mayhem show. This is our 27th show, which is crazy. We've covered everything from Newsmax, 60 million, payout. We talked a little bit about, the CDC person being out, and that's kind of where we went on our hot topics. We had some more to talk about, but hey, we'll get into it the next go around. But more so than anything, right? More so than anything. And then once again, I'd like to say a huge thanks to my guest, Clay Lehman, for joining us and keeping it real. But don't forget, share this episode, drop a comment, and let us know which hack you're using first. I'm G Money. This is the Mortgage Mayhem, where real estate meets real talk. And I'll see you on the next one next Tuesday, guys. I'm out. Much love. Yo, yo.